Hey folks, so this is going to be a tutorial covering like the absolute fundamentals of the Unreal Engine. Uh, I just want to make sure that everyone's on the same page and that we're not having anyone left behind. So this will run through the process of importing, um, giving a kind of a rundown of the project itself, just to make sure you understand what you're meant to be doing in each section of the in each section of the submission, and then on top of that, we'll be uh, giving a look at the general layout, a very basic overview of blueprints, and then a quick review of variables. Yeah, and we'll get some basic buttons set up in the scene. Um, yeah, so we're going to go through a series of things that should hopefully give you like a basic understanding of how Unreal works. Um, okay, so the very first thing that we're going to do is we need to get the file in the project. So the way we do that, we're going to come to the browser, uh, and if I go to modules, so this is on the project for the module, the page for the module. If I scroll down to here, you'll see that there's the assessment project file. Click on that. Because Canvas has got something wrong with it, you've got to click on this button up here. That will then take you to the link to be able to download the file. And then you'll want to open that in Unreal. Now, how you open that in Unreal, if I just minimize that, is when you pop it open for the first time, you're not going to be presented with the engine itself. You're going to be presented with the launcher. Just to kind of just cover the bases as well. If I just boot up the Epic Game Launcher, I might as well just cover it whilst I'm here. This is what you see when you get the Epic Game Launcher. Potentially it might default to this view here with all the games and stuff. I'd encourage you to get the games that they're offering for free. But if you come down to this Unreal Engine view, just click the launch button here. You've got your different versions here, and give me a quick second. So it's not there. It's so it's not there. Where's the installs? Sorry, yeah, I clicked on the wrong library. That's real good branding by them. So yeah, if you go into the library here, you can see there's engine versions here, and you can if you're not on the right version of Unreal, you can install the new version of it. The version that I've got for this project is 4.23. As long as you're not going like this will run on any of your machines. If you go further than what is on the university machines, that's going to cause a problem. You can check the canvas for what that version is. But 4.230 is kind of reliably works. So let's close that. In terms of importing a project, if you've got projects that exist, you can access them on here. Alternatively, you can go down to Browse. And apologies. Under whatever your file directory is, under Documents, and then under you'll find that there's a folder called Unreal Projects. You can click on that, and then when you've downloaded your project itself when you download the assessment project from Canvas, you'll want to unzip it. You'll want to place it in this folder, in its own individual kind of folder like these. And then for actually getting it to connect to Unreal, what you're going to want to do is go into this here, select this file here, and then click Open. And then when you do that, the project will load into this interface here, and you'll be able to, you'll be able to access it. So let's see. Assessment map example. Okay, so it's this one here. So we should have an example of what we'll be producing in the class, in the environment. Then we're going to set that to the side, and then we're going to produce it ourselves. So quick thing, when you boot up Unreal for the first time, it may be that you're presented with a black screen. Don't worry about this. This is just the default scene. You just need to choose one of these scenes at the bottom here in the content browser, and you'll be able to see something. So in terms of your projects, I just want to kind of run through this just to kind of cover the bases. The two scenes that you've got is your tutorial exercises, and then you've got your gameplay sequence. So in your gameplay sequence, you're going to be producing a 1 minute gameplay sequence within the constraints of the level. You know, to kind of show off your expertise, produce something that is portfolio worthy, that you would, you know, encapsulates the skills that you've learned over the tutorials we've done, but also kind of goes beyond that and shows some of your expertise and initiative. In the tutorial exercises project, you're going to do each one of the tutorials that I've presented week to week, and you'll you'll compile them into this one project. So it means when I mark the project, I'll be able to kind of, observe the different elements you've produced and kind of determine, whether you've produced them correctly or not. Okay, so let's just hop into the tutorial exercises project. I've already got some projects in there based on the stuff we've been covering so far. It might need a second, just whilst the lighting builds. Apologies if the audio cut out there. Yeah, it just needs. It might need a little bit of time just to compile the lighting. Before we go any further in this, I just wanted to bring your attention to this little button up here. So if you click on this, depending on when you open Unreal for the first time, it'll be like flashing green or whatever. But this offers like a good kind of selection of tutorials that you can complete. This Welcome to the Unreal Editor one is a really great one for just kind of getting your bearings in the engine. It kind of explains the various elements, and it kind of takes control of the engine. Stops you from, straying and getting lost in systems. Very kind of railroads, but gives you the core essentials. And then you've got, your other elements covering, the basics of the engine, blueprints, so on and so forth. So you can kind of go through these in your own time. I would encourage you to. These ones are curated by Unreal, so they're probably a good point of reference on top of what we're covering in the class. A reminder as well that if you hold Alt and Control, you can kind of hover over various elements, and it'll give you kind of additional kind of supplementary information about various tools and elements of your interface. Cool. So without further ado, this is the Unreal interface. If any of you have used Unity before, you'll kind of recognize the kind of the layout. It's quite similar. You've got your viewport in the center. You've got your your different options for saving and things like that, and settings along the top. You've got your world outliner, which is known as like the hierarchy in Unity. This is where like every object in the scene is kind of stored in directory. You got your details panel, your world settings panel, content browser. This is kind of where like all of your stuff not in the scene, but just kind of your prefabs or what are known as your blueprints in in Unreal Engine. And then this is kind of your palette of stuff that you can that you can bring into the project if you wish. So from here I'm just going to give you a quick demo of what we're going to be testing in this class. So we've got two buttons set up. Well, we've created a prefab or blueprint for a button. When we interact with that button, it turns red, and it changes an object from a big object to a very small object and flat. Obviously that's kind of blurring through the floor, but you can see when we interact with it, it changes color, and that shape is altered. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of what we're going to be doing. Relatively straightforward in terms of format. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to drag these elements over. If you're wondering how I just did that, in terms of moving around the space, a lot of this is handled with the right click. So right click and then using WASD, Q and E allows you to go up and down. Z and C allow you to adjust the field of view. So yeah, and then for like some nice little hotkeys, if you're moving an object like I'm doing here, if you hold Shift, it moves the object. It kind of moves the world and leaves the object relative in the center of the screen. Obviously, like holding Shift and stuff allows you to select multiple objects. You probably get the gist of that stuff. But you can see as I'm selecting these things, it kind of highlights them in the side window here. So without further ado, let's create our first object. So when you're creating a blueprint, you've got two options realistically. The first option is to either create it from an existing object. So you can see that I've got this object that I've created, this cube, and I can add a blueprint. So I can add a script to said blueprint like this. The alternative is I come to this window here, right click, and I've got the option to create a blueprint class. And I can kind of create it from here. The one that we'll probably want to worry about just for now is an actor. So this is kind of like your bread and butter blueprint. We don't really need it for the purposes of a button to be like a pawn or a character or any of the other sort. So for me, So for me, I'm just going to create it from the already existing object I've got in the scene. So add script to the blueprint. And I'm just going to call this, I've already got the name for a button. One thing you may want to consider doing is adding a little kind of caption to it to kind of discern it from other objects. And yeah, there we go. You can see this window that's opened up. This is the kind of the blueprints interface. There's three viewports. So there's the initial viewport, this is the construction script, and then there's the graph. We don't need to worry about the construction script for now. That's like a bit more of an advanced thing. We just want to worry about the event graph and the viewport, so we can get rid of the construction script for now. So kind of running around the interface here, we've got your components window. This is like where essentially all the different elements of your object are compiled here. So for example, if you had a lamp, you would have maybe a light source as a component, you'd have the static mesh as a component, and then you'd have like the collision, like if the player like collided with it and you wanted them to be able to push a button to turn it on. So in the case of this, we've got the static mesh, which is basically the root of the object. If we'd created the blueprint completely from scratch, we would just have the word root here, and then we could add bits to it. And that would be this is the parent, and then you have the children from the bottom of here. Going around the interface, we've got the different pieces of code, the events that exist in the scene here. You can see that we've got a couple that exist by default. We've got the begin play event. For any of you that are kind of unfamiliar with kind of programming, like this is with the interface, like this is your equivalent of your start event or your when instantiated event. And then this is the kind of event tick, so this is like your update event. One of the main challenges of blueprints is just getting used to that different syntax. It can take a while to adjust to learn all of the right names, but it is possible to pick it up and figure it out. The only one that we're going to worry about for now is this event begin overlap. This is our like basic collision event. So yeah, let's do something with that. Um, but before we go any further, right click and then click and drag is how to move around the scene. Click and drag with the left mouse click is how you select an object. And then obviously zoom in and zoom out with a, that's what it says on the tin. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we are going to have this event overlap do something. So you can see that we've got the initial node, and then we've got these little kind of these little connection points that we can drag off from. The white one here with the arrow is what's kind of known as the execution pin. So like everything that runs in the logic needs to connect to a starting an initiating event. Without that initiating event, the code won't run. So this line will kind of flow through your entire graph. And when you playtest it, you'll be able to kind of see that glowing line as the program is run. So yeah, so for the purposes of this, I'm just going to drag a line off. And we're going to search for the word material. And you can see here that once we've done that, it's giving us a couple of different options. We're just going to set the material here. And you can see it's created a reference here. We could have done it that method. Alternatively, we can come to this window here with all of our components and we can drag a reference out. And then we could have searched for the set material from there. So that connects to the target. Without that being connected, we will get an error if we compile this. So you should always compile your code before you try play it, just to make sure there's no issues. So yep, there's clearly an issue there. So we need to connect that target across. And we're going to change the material. We're going to set it to red. And just compile that again. And you'll see that that's good to go. Come here, click play. That's not working. So you might be wondering why that's the case. If we're able to collide with this here, it doesn't really make much sense. The answer is that whilst this has like a physical volume to it, which you can collide with, we need a specific collider, like a box collider, to tell the object whether it's having like an overlap event. Because you can see it's not begin collide, it's begin overlap. So what we need is we need another component. So we're going to create a component which is going to be a box collision. So when in doubt, if you're having issues with being able to get collision events working, make sure you've got a box collision. And secondly, make sure that that box collision is accessible. So if you look at this box here, it's actually smaller than the object that it currently exists within. So we need to use the scale tool, which is this up here, to just increase the size of that. And now we should find that changes color. So that's great. So if I just move that across here, what's nice is we've created a blueprint. Oh, a quick shortcut, by the way. Control, Shift, and S will save everything in your game. Control and S will only save your scene. So make sure that you get into the routine of Control, Shift, and S'ing. So one thing that's nice is that I've now got this. So that's fully kind of, able to be replicated. I can delete this, the original one, and I can still keep creating new versions. So now I've got this this template to work from, which is really handy. So if I delete those. So what we're going to do next, real straightforward, is we're going to allow a kind of reverse state for this. So we're going to search for a new event. And the way that we do that is we right click and we need to search for a collision event. So if we search for overlap, you can see we get a lot of options here. You can see we've also got context sensitive on, which means that things, you know, are related to what won't break when you run your code. If you untick that, you're kind of going into uncharted territory. Just note that the first thing that Unreal selects when you search for something isn't necessarily the thing you're meant to go for. For example, here it's choosing is overlapping actor, when actually what we want is here. Oh, sorry, it's here. There you go. Event actor overlap. So now this will detect whether we end colliding with the object. And all we need to do here, I'm going to use the same reference because it's referring to the same object. And just going to do set material again. So that can go across. And we'll need to set the material. So the base material. So if we compile that and click play. You can see now we've got a nice little functioning button. So, you know, even with just a very, very short period of time. Oops. Bear with me. If I turn on snap. Just wanted to space these out nicely. Another nice little shortcut is if you hold, I obviously showed you shift before, that kind of alters the relative position. If you hold alt, that duplicates the object. Whoops. But you've got to remember to let go in between each one, otherwise it'll keep moving the same object. So if I click play now, I've got this nice little keyboard. Kind of responds to the position of my character. So yeah, even with something real simple like this, you can create like a nice little interactive toy. Yeah, so that's great. We've got the kind of fundamental element created. The thing that we're going to create next, I just shuffle this over. Nope. If I shuffle this over. Is, you know, we've created a button, but we want this button to kind of correspond with something else. So, you know, if I create another object, so let's say this sphere. I want to change the color of this sphere based on the button being pressed. So how do we do that? Well, if we go back into our blueprint, what we're going to do is we're going to create a copy of this here. So these two sections of code here, because it's essentially going to we're going to just want to change the material as part of this. So we can have the same thing. That sounds great. The problem is if we compile that, we're going to get an error because we have no reference to our object itself. And that if we try, you know, do what we did before with the static mesh, we can't drag in this blueprint. It's not going to like it because it's in the scene. If we were editing this in the scene blueprint, that would be a different story. I would recommend against doing this. You can use it, but it can get a bit messy if you're you've got like lots of overlapping stuff in the level blueprint. Originally, that's what blueprints used to be. Before it was known as blueprints, it was known as Kismet, and the logic system was that you had to have all your logic compiled in the level blueprint, and it was so messy and it was horrible. And now that they've kind of divided it up into individual objects, and it's just so much cleaner. So what we need to do if we're going to have this set up, we need to get a reference, and to do that we need to create a variable. So if you noticed when we were looking at the events from before, you can see beneath this we've got variables. So it's really easy to create a variable. I'm just going to create one now. Click on that button there. And we're going to create a specific type of variable. So some of you may know, obviously, your kind of conventional variable types, of things like Boolean, integer, your strings, all that stuff. We're going to go for something a little more, a little bit more complex. If you've done any stuff in Unreal at this, sorry, in Unity at this point, when you create like a public object, you can access it in the actual blueprint editor rather than just having to rely on when you're programming. We're going to do a similar thing. We're going to create an object that can be referenced and connected in the scene. So the first question we need to ask is, what is that object that we're trying to reference? And the way we can do that is if we minimize this, we can come to the scene, we can click on the object in question, and you can see here what type of object it is. This is what we need to be creating our variable to match up to. So if we come back to the blueprint editor and we come to our variable here, one thing to quickly note, you'll notice with this Boolean that I've got right here, there is no default value, and that's because we need to compile the blueprint for that to be shown. So if we change this now to, what was it called? Sorry, static mesh actor. Yeah. Static. If we search for it, static mesh actor. Scroll a bit, you can see it right there. Great. So we have this object we can reference now. We need to give it a good name. So let's call it button output. If we drag that in, it's going to give us two options, which is either to set the number or to get it. We just need to get it because we just need a reference to call on. So if we connect that across, it's going to create a little node for the connection point, because it's going to be referencing the static mesh component as part of the object that we're choosing. So, similar to what we had here. So rather than referencing the entire object, it's just getting the static mesh as part of the object. And yeah, then we're going to change that material based on that collision. So if we just compile. Oh, yep, that's a long pause. Yep, so that's fine. Make sure to save regularly. Yep, so if we now minimize this, one quick thing to say as well, I really despise this element of Unreal, but if you've got a window in front of you and you only have one monitor, basically these panels that pop out, you can't click on the back window and have them hide. So what you end up with is in this inevitably silly situation where you've got to like fully minimize the window to be able to kind of see what's going on behind. You can't just pop it out. So what I tend to do is put it in the tab there, and then that way I can just quickly switch between them, and there's no kind of irritating, alternating. You can't even change it from here either. You've got to minimize it. Anyway, so if we click play, and do that, you can see that that is not working. So you might be wondering why that's the case. And the answer is it's not that we don't have a collider on it, because we've not included that as part of the script. It's about colliding with this object here. The issue is that we haven't connected it to the sphere. You can see here by that we're getting a lot of errors of it not being able to reference that blueprint. So obviously we need to fix that to avoid this getting an error. So if we select our object and we look for that reference that we created, so it's button output, you'll see it's not listed here. And we can search for it, so we can search for a button. Nothing comes up. So something has clearly gone wrong. If you remember back to what I was saying before about Unity, is when you create prefabs, or rather variables within prefabs, you need to state them as either public or private. So we need to do the same. So you can see that there's this little eyeball here. Click on that. That is now a public variable, and we can reference that in the scene. So after compiling, tutorial exercises, and you can see now button output is now visible. And what we can do, which is nice, is we can just click on this little eyedropper tool, choose the actor in question, and now that works. Obviously you can see the material changes, but it does the basic job. And what's really nice with this is that you can, that's not just applicable to the sphere. That, you can change whatever reference you want it to be within reason, of course. So you can see that alters the material of other stuff, which is great. Yeah, and just to kind of hammer this home, this isn't just exclusive to changing materials. There's other elements that we can alter about the object itself. This is the input, and then this is the output, and you can change this to whatever you fancy. So as we did with the doors before, you could alter the scale, you can alter the shape, you can trigger sound effects. If you added more components to the objects that you were affecting, you could add lighting. The only thing you have to make sure is that there is that reference for it to call, and that there is the objects within it to reference. So for example, if you had an object that was like this object here, that you wanted to open or to kind of react in some kind of way, maybe emit a particle effect, let's say when you push the button, you would need to make sure a particle effect was added to that object in question. Otherwise it would throw an error. But yeah, there's a lot that you can do with that. I'll just do a quick example here. I think it's local scale. I'm going to try scale. Remember, you can't just rely on the first reference. Set active relative scale 3D. I believe if we drag off from here, we'll be able to get a better reference. So that goes to there. Now this is going to be quite an extreme thing. It's basically, whoops. It's basically, you just have to watch out for that when you can see the object disappears. That's because it's basically shrinking down to a ridiculously small size. Yeah, if I just take the object I've got here, check what the scale is. I'm going to set this to a round number. Oops. Yeah, so I've got this nice easy round number to work with. So I can set the initial scale to be the number I want it to change to be 5, and then when I'm not stepping on it or affecting the button, I'm gonna make it be something different. So I'm gonna set it to be 3. So it like inflates almost. Ooh, didn't like that. Ah, it's because there's no reference, remember. This is why it's always good to compile before you run a project. Catches a lot of this stuff. So yeah. Ooh. Hey ho, there you go. The only thing I'd say on top of this, if we wanted to add a little bit of kind of customization to this, let's say we didn't want this to be like a consistent, we didn't want this to just be 5. What we could do. Oh, and just one more thing that might be nice to know as well. If you want to access one of these individual values, you can right-click on this here, and you can click Split Struct Pin, and that will allow you to access these variables separately. So, if you just wanted to alter the z-axis, you could do that without having to influence the other two, or set them manually, which is irritating to say the least. But basically what we're going to do is make it so rather than having to use an arbitrary amount, so let's say 5 and 5, let's make it so we get the variable, so let's say the current size, and then we store that as a variable, and then we can use these here to set the relative sizes. So if we come back to the start here, we're going to create a new event. So we're going to come back to our old friend event begin play, and we're going to create a very basic piece of code. We're going to create one more variable, and you'll see that it's kept the variable type from before. We're going to go for a real simple one, which is just a vector, which is your 3 different pieces of information. So, X, Y, and Z. And we're just going to call this start size. And I don't think we need to make this public. We should be able to, we should be able to deal with this without worrying about it being public or private. In this case, we're going to set the start size. And what we're going to do is we're going to get the size of our static mesh component. Oh, whoops. We're going to get the size of our button to begin with. So we just need to make sure we get the right reference here. We just need it to match. Yep, so it's the world scale that we want to get. Scale 3D. So we can connect that up. And what we'll do as well is we'll do a little print. So printing is really useful. Basically what you can use this for is just to kind of to debug stuff. make sure that when you're trying out stuff, you can make sure that the right information is being sent before you connect it up to something more complex and it goes wrong basically. What we should see is when we run this, we should in the top corner get the coordinates 555. Yep, so 5, 5, and 5. If we just run that again, I believe that should. Oh no, it does disappear still. That's a shame. But yeah, you could see those numbers in the top corner. Something to know as well is that if you're wanting to kind of play your game but not, possess the player, you can use simulate here as well, which is quite useful. Anyway, so we can now, now that we know that this works, we've set that variable to 5, 5, and 5. There's just one more thing that we need to do, which is we can connect directly from here to those two, but I'm just for the sake of keeping the code relatively clean, I'm just going to have those as separate nodes. So that connects to here. So that scale is going to match. And then for the, actually let's do it the other way around, it probably makes more sense. If you want to disconnect a piece of code, you can just do Alt and click and it'll automatically disconnect. And then for our clicked on size, we're going to do divide. So we're going to do vector divided by integer. So let's do divided by 2. So now I can alter this object to whatever scale I want. So something really obtuse. So like 6.937. And that's now going to its halfway size. And we can check. Ooh, it didn't like that. Ooh. We can check that. Ooh. Okay, let's try it again. I still haven't found a good way to hop out of this without. Okay, so if we click eject, we can hop out of this and we can check what size this is. So the original one was 6.9, so this is 3.4, so roughly about right. Yeah, 3.46. So we know that that code is working. Yeah, so that's like the very basic kind of fundamentals of Unreal. This is just one element of it. This is kind of to get the very basics started with. You can obviously go through the rest of the materials now and kind of get to grips with how everything else works. Unreal is a pretty daunting tool, to be blunt, as is a lot of game engines. There's an incredible amount of resources and tools at your disposal, and it's especially in your first year, it can be quite intimidating getting started with these things. So, if you have any other further questions, don't hesitate to get in touch. And I hope you produce something exciting within the engine. Thanks.